Hey, my handsome ladies and gentlemen, this is Shmeaty. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. Unfortunately, for regular viewers that hope to not see a cringe Pokemon on their screen throughout the duration of one of my videos, I did want to run Whimsicott, which itself is not a problem, but I realized that very quickly the only thing that you can realistically pair with Whimsicott is Bastiodon. So we're going to be running that core today, and let's hope that we can align ourselves properly because we are going to need all the help we can get running this very bad team. Pretty nice lead in game number one as Whimsicott's going to lead into a Furret. Furret, of course, going to be able to strike first. What is that? Okay, well, so I guess the cat's out the bag. I got a new phone, and unfortunately, stuff like that just sometimes happens. I guess if I tap too close to the bottom of the screen, Apple AI will pop up because obviously I wanted to bring up Apple AI. Anyway, Furret is going to force a shield from my Whimsicott with the second Swift, but that does mean in turn that I'm going to be able to get the full Fairy Wind farm down, and I see that they have a Scizor, so I'm going to bank nearly 100 Whimsicott energy for later, then bring in my Goodra. Now, the Scizor matchup isn't necessarily bad for Bastiodon, but of course, the reason why Bastiodon's on the team is not to be pivoted inwards. We are going to try to no-shield a Night Slash here. I think this is just about a KO. And indeed it does. So I'm going to bring in the Bastiodon. Looks like my opponent does not want to see the Bastiodon in the back, whatever it is they may have. So we are going to no-shield the initial Night Slash, but the Smackdowns are tearing the Scizor apart. And Scizor has a very difficult time of getting rid of Bastiodon, even without Bastiodon shielding. They're going to boost up that final Night Slash here. I am going to shield, as if you're staying in this long to basically throw your Scizor away, I imagine that Bastiodon may have some usefulness in the back, and it's shown, as it is going to be a Azumarill, rather, in the back. So I'm going to aggressively pivot into my nearly 100 energy Whimsicott, fire off Seed Bomb number 1, and now I'm going to be able to get to Seed Bomb number 2, and also, maybe even Seed Bomb number 3 before the Azu is able to make a move. 2 more Fairy Wind, Seed Bomb number 3 has been reached, and this is going to be a problem for the Azu, as they're going to drop very low in health. They can fire off 1 Ice Beam, but they would need to get the Bubble down or reach a move, which Azu is not very good at reaching moves. Bastiodon comes in, gets the Smackdown, farm down, GG's to this trainer. Getting into game number 2, Whimsicott leads into Galarian Corsola. This is a little bit awkward, but we do have a pacing advantage, so I can land a Moonblast onto this G-Sola and then look to probably pivot out into Goodra. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Going to fire off this Moonblast, fire off 1 further Fairy Wind, and attempt to catch onto Goodra. I am going to be successful in that catch as well, so this Nightshade is going to be a lot less impactful. It's still a very good move landing onto the Goodra, but it's better that it lands there as opposed to on the Whimsicott, which, when you're running a Pokemon as glassy as Whimsicott, it's pretty important to maintain your health, as it's a very valuable resource. In comes a Primeape. Primeape going to go for a Rage Fist, but that's not going to allow them to farm down before Goodra is able to make a further Aqua Tail. So their options here are to either sponge this Aqua Tail and nearly get KO'd, or double shield. And going down 2 shields is almost a recipe for disaster in every scenario. But I am going to shield up this Rage Fist, as I realize that I can quickly get this Fairy Wind farm down. And now if they bring back in the Galarian Corsola, not in too much of a bad spot up against it. Instead, their final Pokemon is going to be Corviknight, and I kind of just have to put Bastiodon here. And this is a little bit awkward, unfortunately. Putting Bastiodon onto the Corviknight, where it does have the ability to basically tear through my health with super effective fast move pressure in the form of Sand Attack, is not the best spot to be in. I tried to double call a bait with an Air Cutter. I try to double call an Air Cutter bait, and it just does not work for me, so I am looking to reach that last second move, but before I'm able to do so, they're able to get the farm down. Whimsicott comes in, looking to land a Moonblast onto the Corviknight, but this will not be enough to knock out. They're going to be able to reach an Air Cutter here, and at this point, I just don't think I have a win con. I'm going to shield up the Air Cutter. If they boost, I automatically lose, but they have so much energy on that Pokemon. Unfortunately for me, I try to overfarm as much as I can versus the incoming Galarian Corsola, but they're going to be able to outpace to the Nightshade before I'm able to get a substantial amount of energy to have energy for both the Galarian Corsola and the Corviknight, and they're going to be able to dispatch the Whimsicott. Unfortunate, but GG's. It is going to be a Dragon Breath Shadow Shiny Charizard in the next game. What a flex. I am going to, of course, bring in Goodra here, as if you're running Charizard, I would imagine, especially in the Great League, your preference would probably be the pacing. So I anticipated Ember, and I was unfortunately wrong. Unfortunately, I was wrong again, as my opponent brings in a Jellicent. I have to shield a move from this Jellicent, unfortunately, and look to basically pivot out of this matchup, and I'm able to do so. Getting the catch of the Surf onto Whimsicott, the switch timer is very heavily misaligned, so even though they land this Surf, they're not going to be able to immediately switch out, which gives Whimsicott an opportunity. I'm going to fire off the Seed Bomb. It does ever so slightly burn my opponent's switch timer, but I've gotten them into a range where Seed Bomb's going to be enough to KO, and they are going to be able to land a Air Cutter onto the Whimsicott, which leaves us, although we were able to survive, it leaves us at like 1 HP, so not the best situation. I bring in my Bastiodon, and in the back, they've got Lickitung. For those in the know, Bastiodon is very good into Lickitung, and this Lickitung is just going to go for Wrap. I know that I can no-shield a debuffed Power Whip, so I'm not going to shield the next move either. In my mind, I know that if the Charizard is ever able to make a Blast Burn, that is the more impactful move that will be thrown in this game. So, I'm not even going to bother shielding the Lickitung. If they get 3 debuffs on my Bastiodon and then land a Power Whip, so be it. They may win the game at that point, but I am going to continue the no-shield, and it is a 3rd Wrap. Now, these Wraps are double resisted onto Bastiodon's unique Steel and Rock typing, which is a very Glass Cannon, very RPS typing, which is why Bastiodon is so frequently hated in the Great League meta, because it plays in such a way, because of its typing and because of its fast move to charge move set. It plays in such a way where, realistically, you have to hope that you have favorable alignment, or at least something that you can beat on the screen. If you're in a negative matchup, you will just be top lefting. Get into the next game. It's going to be a Whimsicott leading into a Shadow Scizor. This is probably the worst lead I could possibly think to see, shy of maybe a Shadow Talonflame. I'm going to pivot into Goodra. Goodra going to have to put up a shield on a Nightshade, and unfortunately, that probably means that in comes a potential Water type. There is that potential Water type. Scizor very frequently paired with a Water type. There is the very standard team, I should say, of Scizor, Azumarill, Cradily, but I've also seen a lot of Scizor double Water this season with either Gastrodon. Sometimes they'll throw in a Feraligatr or Blastoise. There's almost no creativity when team building in the Great League. Nevertheless, I am going to expend a shield on my Goodra, then I have to pivot into Bastiodon. If my assumption is correct, this is going to be the Cradily edition of the team, which means that Azu is virtually useless here, and they don't want to pivot into their Scizor. But unfortunately, it's not what I thought it was. It's going to be a Dunsparce. Dunsparce does have access to that double super effective Drill Run. And although it's coming from a Dunsparce, the Pokemon I've gone on record to say should be recategorized as the disappointment Pokemon, it is still very much not something that I would like to see right now. They are going to be able to fire off a Drill Run, but it doesn't land onto Basti. It instead lands onto Whimsicott. I'm going to look to keep some energy in that Dunsparce matchup. I don't want to throw at the Dunsparce, so that when the Scizor inevitably comes back in to try to Bullet Punch me down, I have a Moonblast to land onto them. They decide to no-shield that. Moonblast does quite a lot of damage. I did get the attack drop as well, but unfortunately, it's not going to save me. It's not a Simul. It is instead going to be a Bullet Punch knocking out the Whimsicott, and now I feel forced to bring in Goodra to get the Dragon Breath Snipe, and now in comes the Dunsparce. I fire off my move on alignment, basically assuming that they are going to undertap their move, but unfortunately for them, it looks as if they just didn't get their rollout through there. One turn bring in is absolutely alive and well. I hope if Niantic is hearing anything that I'm saying right now, they seriously consider taking a look at one turn bring in. That glitch has been very prevalent. I just got Hydro Pump by an Azu. That glitch has been very prevalent in this game for a very long time. Goodra escapes with the move, and now we have the Thunder Punch. Now, Thunder Punch hits slightly harder, but Dunsparce has to get KO'd. They hang on with just a little bit more than 1 HP, so they're able to survive the preceding Dragon Breath, get the Rock Slide, BM, GG's to them. I can't even complain about getting BM'd because I am running the most alignment-dependent team I have run in years. Nevertheless, I am going to start off with a positive alignment. It's going to be Whimsicott leading into a Gastrodon. Gastrodon, for some reason, is staying in. I'm going to fire off my Seed Bomb. As soon as I get it there, I can fire off 4 more Fairy Winds and a second Seed Bomb. Now, I don't know what this Gastrodon is building up to. Maybe they think that if they continue to build up energy, Niantic will give them Icy Wind or something, but it's not in the cards, unfortunately. I hate to tell them that. They are going to be able to make a second Body Slam here, but given that they played this matchup out the way that they did, Whimsicott has undoubtedly got some play in the back. I'm going to opt to shield once, then bring in my Bastiodon into the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Now, because we have alignment here, this actually isn't the worst thing I could possibly see. It's going to be a CMP tied to their second drill run, but Bastiodon's going to be able to shield that up and land the double super effective Flamethrower, which I debated no undercharging, but realized that they would have just been able to pivot out, so I continued to full charge it. And now, they are going to bring back in the Gastrodon. Whimsicott comes back in for the Seed Bomb. Snipe, Seed Bomb able to get the KO onto that Gastrodon, and in the back, we see why they were so hesitant, as their third Pokemon is Altaria. Moonblast is going to connect huge damage onto the Altaria, and we're able to get the farm down. Whimsicott doesn't do much, but it certainly can do that. Not a bad lead in the next game either, as they are going to have a Feraligatr onto our Whimsicott, but my opponent must just be living in my brain as they catch my Seed Bomb on 6. And, unfortunately, they're going to catch it onto Drapion. Now, I am going to bring in my Bastiodon, as realistically, I believe this to be the best spot that my Bastiodon's going to be. I don't know what third is, but I know that Drapion, especially a non-Shadow, is not going to have a very easy time getting rid of our Bastiodon. We get the Apple AI glitch again. Unfortunately, I gotta figure out how to disable that. That is so annoying. I'm going to fire off a Stone Edge at the Drapion. If they shield it, it's a really bad play, so they are going to just opt to let it go. I bring in my Whimsicott and return the favor as I catch a Hydro Cannon onto the Whimsicott where it's going to be resisted, and we keep Bastiodon alive for later. I am going to put a shield up onto my Whimsicott, as it would make getting rid of this Feraligatr just a little bit easier, and in the back, they've got Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is a Pokemon that resists almost everything this team has, and Bastiodon's pacing is absolutely abysmal. So I'm going to have to no-shield Whimsicott here, as I very clearly see that the Pokemon that's going to be able to get me out of this matchup with this Ferrothorn is going to be Bastiodon. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter that they have 2 shields, because the Smackdown fast move pressure is existent enough, and the threat of a Flamethrower is always going to be enough to pull a shield, especially when they don't know what my third Pokemon is. They go for the Power Whip. I anticipate them trying to make a switch there, so I pivot into the Goodra, but also this covers for them having gone for the Power Whip onto my Bastiodon and potentially knocking it out, where obviously we can see it is going to be very useful for us. They go for the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon from the Shadow Feraligatr, not going to be enough to knock out. I go for the Aqua Tail, as I believe Aqua Tail is going to nearly pick up the knockout from this range. I go for one for the Dragon Breath, another Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail onto the Feraligatr is going to be just enough to get them to 1 HP. They go for one for their Shadow Claw, and now they have a shieldless Ferrothorn with a Bastiodon with a full Flamethrower loaded. GG's to this trainer. Don't run this team, by the way. Running it had me lose about 150 elo, so yeah, not a good situation for your boy there. I am going to safe switch out of the Charizard matchup into my Goodra, and Goodra's unfortunately going to have to eat an Air Cutter here. Air Cutter is going to land onto my Goodra, but that's not really a substantial amount of damage. They bring in their Chestnut, and Chestnut, pretty interesting Pokemon. I really like its ability to have quite a lot of play into the cringe that is the Open Great League at the moment, and I may be taking a look at it later on in the near future. Gudra builds up to the next Aqua Tail, but my opponent, very, very pristine counting there, fires off the Frenzy Plant just before we're able to make that next Aqua Tail. I'm actually legitimately impressed by that. I'm bringing in the Whimsicott. Whimsicott not looking to throw a move whatsoever, just looking to get rid of the Chestnut with the full Fairy Wind farm down. Are we going to be able to get it there? Not quite yet able to make a move. So now, in comes the Charizard. Charizard is going to be tasked with either tanking a Moonblast or dropping a shield to a Grass Fairy type. They are going to try to tank the Moonblast, and in the back, they've got Primeape. Now, you may generally think that shielding early Rage Fist is a bad play, but I realize my Gastrodon has absolutely no play in the back. So, what I have to do is hope that Whimsicott can live the boosted and then double boosted Karate Chops on very low, now low red HP, and make a third Seed Bomb. 2 Seed Bombs for the shields of the Primeape, and 1 Seed Bomb for the KO. Seed Bomb onto the Primeape. Do we live the cross chop? We do, and Primeape gets outpaced because of the little bit of residual energy we had with our Whimsicott. GG's. Let's see what awaits us in the next game. Whimsicott leads into a Shadow Talonflame. Oh my goodness, my literal dream. I am going to fire off 1 Fairy Wind, attempt to wait a turn so that they try to fire off multiple Incinerates, and then Gudra is going to be then able to hopefully make an Aqua Tail. They don't fall for it. They then pivot into their Dedenne. Dedenne going to be able to build up to the Play Rough. Now I can either lose my Gudra or commit a shield on a potential Parabolic Charge. I decide to shield up, and Dedenne full sends the Play Rough. Now I'm going to build up before they're able to make another Play Rough, and I'm going to go for yet another Aqua Tail, which will not be enough to KO. I look for the farm down of the Dedenne, and they are going to fire off another Play Rough on literal 1 HP. Unfortunately for me, they are going to grab both of my shields there, but it's an Azu in the back. This team is peak Gastrodon disrespect. Every single Pokemon on this team loses pretty hard to Gastrodon, bar none. I'm going to fire off 2 Thunder Punches at the Azu. Azu, realistically, I don't think they want to shield here, but it's getting to the point where we're really twisting our opponent's arm. We go for the Thunder Punch, pivot out into the Gastrodon, and now there is absolutely no win con remaining, as that is not a Hydro Pump, and even if it was, Basti would farm through the rest of their team. GG's. Okay, I deserve this. It is a Wigglytuff on the next lead. Whimsicott into Wigglytuff. Not necessarily a comfortable matchup, but I will be able to fire off a Seed Bomb bait on 7 and look to try to either grab a shield or do some significant damage onto the Wigglytuff. I go for yet another Seed Bomb. This is only going to be a Seed Bomb, so they have very little incentive to shield it, but the shield isn't necessarily what I'm hoping for there, as I realize that if they go for the Icy Wind here, it'll just KO unless they undercharge, so I could just bring in my Gastrodon. If they ever pivot out, they lose switch advantage versus a Gastrodon team, and that's exactly what they do. They bring in their Dusclops. Dusclops did pivot out in an awkward time, so they're not able to get a Hex through or get their move off on CMP, and now because they aggro pivot the Dusclops, I anticipate, like, okay, you need big damage to get through the Gastrodon, which is a massive wall, and I try to shield a potential Poltergeist. I don't get Poltergeisted, unfortunately, but it is what it is. I, at this point, realize that if they have Poltergeist, they just have it, and it's probably just going to be really bad for me, but they don't send it. It's going to be another Shadow Punch. So, I am going to go for 1 further Smackdown. Oh, no, we're just going to under-tap the Stone Edge. Never mind me. Going for the Stone Edge onto the Dusclops. Dusclops, with its silly little hat, is going to get KO'd there. They have a Lantern in the back. This, of course, very bad for me. In comes the Wigglytuff, and I realize that this game is impossible to win. They are going to go for an Aqua Tail, but they have a shield with this Wigglytuff. So, although an Aqua Tail is never going to land, I'm going to lose about 60% of my health to the Wigglytuff. Very bad for me. I really hope that last charm didn't just land, but even if it didn't, there's not really a way for this team to get rid of this Lantern at the health range it's at. They reach the Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt from this range will be enough to KO the Gudra, and unfortunately, we are not going to be in for a very good time. I go for the Flamethrower BM, hoping that the Flamethrower lands on their screen. GG's to them. We've now made it to the final game of the video, Whimsicott leading into an Azumarill. This not the worst case scenario. Although Ice Beam would hit very, very hard, I don't have to respect the Ice Beam. So I'm going to fire off the Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb does do a pretty sizable amount onto the Azu, all things considered, and now I'm going to go for Seed Bomb number 2. Seed Bomb number 2 going to do a pretty decent amount of damage onto the Azu. They're going to be able to fire off an Ice Beam here, but once again, I know that Whimsicott's very comfortably going to be able to survive an Ice Beam. So one further Fairy Wind and a Seed Bomb will allow Whimsicott to win the Zero Shield scenario here, if that's what they want to play to, and indeed they do. They're going to bring in Typhlosion. Typhlosion has nowhere to go in the back, and their team is very Bastiodonable, even with the Azu out of the way. This is the most Bastiable boy, so we're going to fire off the Thunder Punch, and the second Thunder Punch is also either going to grab a shield or do significant damage onto the Galarian Moltres. They double shield the Galarian Moltres, and that's just going to make this game go quicker. Easy no shield on our Goodra here, as this game has basically now concluded. Unfortunately, when you play Bastiodon, this is basically how games go. You either hard win or hard lose, but moral of the story, that's why I don't like playing it. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Unfortunately, for us Whimsicott enjoyers, one of the best core pairings for it is going to be a very cringe Pokemon like Bastiodon, and there's not really another viable Rock Steel type in the meta. You can cope that Steelix is also a good pairing, but Fire types exist, so if there's one of those, you'll just lose. So with all that being said, I do not like running Bastiodon. I built one just for today's video and probably will never run it again. But Whimsicott getting aligned onto a couple Gastrodons and making them panic is one of the best feelings I've had against cringe teams recently. So with all that being said, thanks once again so much for watching. I've been Shmeaty. I hope to see you all again next time, and have a good rest of your day. See ya.
I don't like this rock.
Oh, sorry, I don't like that rock either.